The person you think you love most right now, you might only feel that way because you have seen them enough times. That is not cynicism. That is your brain running a program it has been running your whole life. And by the end, you will understand exactly why. Think about the last time feelings crept up on you without warning. A coworker you started noticing more and more. A friend who kept showing up in your notifications. Someone in your orbit who just kept being there. You probably told yourself the feelings were natural, that something real was growing between you. But there is a mechanism running underneath all of that, and it has almost nothing to do with who that person actually is. Your brain has a bias called the mere exposure effect. It confuses seeing someone repeatedly with feeling good about them, not because they are good for you, just because they are familiar. And it has been shaping your relationships your whole life without you knowing. Here is what is actually happening in your brain. In 1968, a psychologist named Robert Zajonc ran a deceptively simple experiment. He showed participants completely meaningless symbols, random shapes that meant nothing at all. Then he asked them to rate how much they liked each one. The result? The shapes they had seen more often, they consistently rated as more pleasant. Not because the shapes were better, just because they were familiar. He called this the mere exposure effect, and it changed the way psychologists think about preference, attraction, and yes, love. His team replicated this across languages, faces, music, even made-up nonsense words, and the pattern held every single time. 1 exposure, neutral response. 5 exposures, slightly positive. 10 exposures, genuinely positive. 25 exposures, actively liked. No interaction, no shared experience, no conversation, just repetition. Your brain interprets repetition as a signal that something is safe, known, and worth caring about. It is the cognitive equivalent of, I have been near this and survived, so it must be good. Zajonc put it simply. He said, preferences need no inferences. You do not need a reason to like something, you just need to have been near it. That phrase has echoed through decades of research because it captures something deeply uncomfortable. Your feelings do not require logic. They just require exposure, which raises an obvious and kind of unsettling question. How many of your relationships started exactly this way? And here is where it stops being a lab curiosity and starts being your actual life. Studies have found that people are significantly more likely to develop romantic feelings for someone they encounter regularly. A neighbor, a classmate, someone on the same morning commute. And here's the part that should make you pause. It is not about compatibility. It is not about chemistry. It is just proximity creating repetition, and repetition creating a feeling your brain quietly labels as warmth. That is point 1. Point 2 is even more uncomfortable. But here's what most people get wrong. They assume familiarity and genuine connection are the same thing. They are not. Familiarity is your brain saying, I recognize this, I have survived near this, therefore it is probably good. Connection is something completely different. It requires vulnerability, reciprocity, being genuinely seen by another person. When you confuse the two, you can spend years in a relationship that feels like love simply because it feels like home, even when the home is not a healthy one. This is where attachment styles enter the picture. If you grew up in an environment that was unpredictable, a parent who was loving some days and distant others, your nervous system learned something specific. It learned to associate emotional inconsistency with love. The anxiety felt familiar. The push and pull felt like passion. Dr. Mary Ainsworth's foundational attachment research documented how these early patterns get wired in deeply. Your brain does not just remember what love looked like in childhood, it actively recreates it. Here is the uncomfortable truth. If your early attachment was anxious or avoidant, the mere exposure effect can actively work against you. The more time you spend around someone who mirrors that old emotional pattern, the more it registers as love in your brain, even when what is actually happening is harm repeating itself. Familiarity is not neutral, it is weighted by history. Think about how this quietly unfolds over time. You meet someone. Week 1, they feel comfortable, not exciting, just easy to be around. A month in, familiarity has deepened and your brain starts generating warmth toward them. By month 3, you are genuinely attached. 6 months in, you're telling yourself you are in love. But here's the question nobody stops to ask. Did you actually choose this person? Or did proximity and repetition do the choosing for you? That is not a small question. That is the whole question. And it gets more layered still. Dr. Arthur Aaron at Stony Brook University showed that closeness between strangers can be deliberately manufactured through structured conversation and shared attention in as little as 45 minutes, which means the feelings you develop for someone you see constantly are partly real and partly a construction your brain assembled from repeated inputs. Knowing that does not make the feelings disappear, but it does change what you do with them. So what do you actually do with all of this? 3 concrete things. First, audit your pattern. Look back at who you have fallen for. Was there a thread, emotional unavailability, inconsistency, someone who mirrored an early dynamic? You are not broken if the answer is yes. You are running an old program. Second, use intentional distance. The mere exposure effect works in reverse too. When contact decreases, the warmth fades and clarity tends to follow. Third, ask what genuine connection actually feels like for you, separate from familiarity. Does this person know the true version of me? Do I feel more myself with them or like I am performing? That third one is the hardest and the most important, because most of us have never slowed down enough to actually ask. We feel warmth and we follow it. We feel comfortable and we call it love. But if you can pause and genuinely ask yourself whether you are drawn to this person because of who they are or because they have simply been nearby long enough, you start to reclaim something. You start to choose rather than drift. And that distinction will change every relationship you have going forward. Research on relationship satisfaction consistently points to the same finding. Couples who report the highest long-term satisfaction are not necessarily the ones who have been together the longest. They are the ones with the highest levels of mutual self-disclosure, real, honest sharing. Familiarity without disclosure is just proximity in disguise. Add genuine honesty, and the neurochemistry shifts from mere exposure to something that actually holds. Remember how we opened? The idea that you might love someone simply because you have seen them enough times? I want you to sit with that, not as something depressing, but as something genuinely freeing. Because if familiarity alone can generate feelings your brain mislabels as love, then you have far more agency in your relationships than you were ever told. You are not at the mercy of whoever happened to show up consistently. You can choose people who are genuinely good for you, and then let repetition do its work there instead. That is not settling. That is choosing with your eyes open. If you found this useful, the video on anxious attachment goes even deeper into why some people feel more drawn to partners who pull away, not less. It is the natural next step after this one. Hit subscribe if you want more of this. A new video drops every week.